someone, somewhere, everyone, everywhere is experiencing something that is worth narrating, worth discussing, worth asking questions about, and worth researching. What drives me to do this work is, I think, the notion of storytelling. I tell my students at John Jay, I mean, literally every day, they're probably tired of hearing it, that research is never boring, that research, like, at its core, reflects somebody's story somewhere, right? Everyone everywhere has a story. These stories reflect larger sociological context, historical context, complicated stuff, right? And if we don't ask how and why questions about those situations that come from our own stories, what's the point? I've been teaching writing since 2005. I've taught at Seton Hall University and Rutgers Newark, and I joined the John Jay faculty about 3 semesters ago. This is my 4th semester as full-time faculty with John Jay College. I'm a lecturer here, and I mainly teach 101, English 101 and English 201. English 101 is a research writing course, and English 201 is a writing across the curriculum course. And when I'm not on campus, I also teach for an organization called Dramatic Adventure Theater, for whom I serve actually as the education director. And our organization bridges service, writing, and acting in various levels of performance in disenfranchised communities all over the world. Dramatic Adventure Theater is an international service arts organization, and we have projects in Zimbabwe, in Ecuador, and also in Slovakia. And what we aim to do is to bring mostly American students, artists, designers, actors, all kinds of people to communities around the world that may not have arts or humanities funding. So we go into these communities, and we usually work with a partner organization in order to identify all kinds of need and to sort of figure out what's happening in that community. What I do is develop a curriculum that will lead our students to create a student-written, directed, and student-performed community showcase. This is done through sort of carefully scaffolded assignments that sort of lead us to that end product. I will train our American teaching artists. Like I said, a lot of them are students, but also professionals, artists, designers, to go into these communities and to run workshops and to lead these sort of community events that all end up leading to the final showcase performance. So far, I've designed and led workshops in English as a second language, theater, and playwriting. First in the Quechuan region of the Ecuadorian highlands, which is a place marked by deep post-colonial poverty. And also in 3 Roma gypsy camps in eastern Slovakia. And I'm actually going back to both of these communities this summer. We're doing a month-long project in Ecuador in June, and then we've been asked to return to the Roma camps in Slovakia in July. So in addition to the original works that our students create in these communities, the team of artists, educators, and students that we bring from the United States is also writing and devising their own pieces, which they bring back to the New York City community and perform and share with a local audience. Often these pieces that we bring back, be them creative nonfiction, short one-act plays, they often shed light on issues of social injustice. For example, an upcoming piece will be a full-length performance performed here in New York that explores the complicated history of the Roma, specifically through the lens of contemporary issues such as sex trafficking and prostitution. Our students that we work with in the communities are all ages. We've worked with students from age 3 to college aged, and sometimes we try to cap it. We'll say no students under the age of 5, and then there's 29 little brothers and sisters who show up, and how do you turn them away? So we work it out. We do workshops with all ages, and it's interesting because through our exercises, students learn how to tell a story through dialogue or not through dialogue, and we do a lot of storytelling. And people always ask me, it's like, oh, you go into these communities where there's so much poverty and there's so much oppression, they must write, stories about all these injustices. And yes, there are layers there, but those aren't the stories we hear. We hear stories about, a whole conflict about a lost shoe and about the repercussions of this lost shoe, and a whole story about lost love, and about someone who doesn't like someone else anymore, and how much that hurts. These are 7th graders, or even some of our college students tell stories like that. So it's interesting that it's not so different. Well, in the Andes, the girl who stands out the most is, of course, Carolina. If you ask anyone who traveled with us, they would say the same. She's actually right back here. I don't know if you can see her. She's spunky. And when I think of the Roma settlement camps, I often think of a little girl named Lysandra. There's so many. I mean, I think of all of our students, and actually I really love working with the older groups as well, which is funny because the older groups come in to usually thinking, well, I'm not really going to be a part of this. I'm just checking out what's going on. We'll see that they're here to work with the little kids, and the next thing you know, they're the ones who are writing their own pieces, coming in with full scenes, monologues, wanting to talk about storytelling. So we do a lot of work with the younger kids, but it's with the older kids, and I meet them and I see my John Jay students in them. They're just in a different situation and in a different place. It's really hard to meet people and develop a bond with these people, and to be in a classroom in which you meet so many students who are hungry for the arts, for writing, for someone to listen to their story. And throughout our time, whether it's 2 weeks or a month, it doesn't get old. This research that we conduct about these stories turns into arguments, and they are arguments that literally can and have changed policy, perspective. They've changed stories, other people's stories, and that's really what I try to encourage my students to do, to tell their stories, to listen to other people's stories, to ask questions about stories, to research, to find data, to look for patterns, and to be aware that we can change stories. What I hope my students get from this, right, whether it's my John Jay students here in New York, or my students abroad, all ages and all communities, is the idea that once we're aware that we have a narrative, once we're aware that we fit into a complex system of other people's narratives, I think we're much more likely to understand ourselves as a character in that narrative, and to understand that there are choices available to us, that we can be an agent of change in our own narrative.